I would like you to picture this situation right now. You're going into a match, you get an unlucky matchup, you lose a game. No big deal, right? We're gonna go back in again. You go back in for a second match, and this time it's actually on you, right? You make a couple misplays, the opponent outplays you, they once again get a win, and you lose more trophies. Now let's say you go in a third time, you get into a game, and it just feels like there's nothing you can do. Are you doing something wrong? Is it your deck? Well, that's what we're going to be answering today. We're going to be going over how exactly you guys can fix some of your decks and potentially make them better so that you can get more wins in Clash Royale. You also have to ask yourself, right, is my deck actually working, or is it just over-leveled cards overpowering the opponent? Is this not really ideal? In a perfect world, you would be able to max out a deck and use a deck that's really good in the meta that has many good matchups, because once you get highly skilled with that deck, then you're going to start getting crazy good finishes. But let's say you don't know if you have a good deck and you aren't sure if these games that you're losing are your fault, or necessarily maybe you have way too low level card levels for your opponent. It's important to figure out if you're losing because of the deck, or because of your skill level, or because of the card levels that you just can't compete with. If you find yourself facing a ton of higher level players than you and it just doesn't feel fair, then you're probably just under leveled and you need to grind up some levels. A great way to do this is to make sure you're in a good clan that's constantly getting great rewards. You can trade, you can finish some masteries and get tons of loot, and always make sure you can play through the challenges and absolutely grind them out for the maximum reward. It's also clutch to bypass Royale if you can, and if you're going to, toss in code Diddy while you're in there. Now, once you've identified the problem that, hey, maybe it is your deck that you need to change, let's take a look at this. I have copied 5 of your guys' decks that I have found in the comments, and all of these decks are honestly quite crazy. Will they work? Well, maybe, but a lot of them do have issues, and a couple changes could make them actually a lot better. For example, looking at this deck here, sure, you have some great defense, but a lot of these cards maybe aren't necessarily the best in the current meta. For example, why are you using Furnace, and why are you using Wizard and Ice Wizard? This is a very confusing combo to me. Although they do splash damage, although they're alright, you're gonna have a tough time with this deck. For example, the only real tank you have in this deck is Valkyrie, and of course you do have the mirror, but that's just not ideal, and you definitely might get outcycled in certain situations. Like, I think Paco would absolutely destroy this deck. I'm not entirely sure what you'd be able to do in order to stop that thing. So just by making a couple changes, we've now swapped in the bomb tower to do that splash damage that you would otherwise be getting with the Wizard and Ice Wizard. We swapped in the tornado to go with the magic archer and also help you out on defense. You'll still be able to use the princess that you already had, and this deck would already be much stronger and have a lot of better matchups just by making a couple of those changes, right? You're going to be able to play a lot more effectively, and even more changes can be made to actually make the deck better. Now, another issue that you could be encountering is that you don't have easy enough ways to do tower damage. A lot of people throw in a Mega Knight and act like he's going to be their win condition, because oftentimes it can work in the lower arenas, but that's really risky, because once opponents start smartening up, you're going to get to a point where the Mega Knight's not going to really be a win condition anymore, and people are going to be able to defend him. You're going to need at least 2 ways of doing tower damage, I would say, in your deck in order for it to be alright, and that is where this deck actually really struggles. The arrows don't do enough tower damage in order to be a win con alone, and the Goblin Barrel has several different answers to where you probably won't get too much damage with it. If they have log, arrows, skeleton army, it's going to be very difficult for that to get value. So in theory, if you were to face someone with those answers to the Goblin Barrel, all they would have to do is play some defense, get a little bit of chip damage on your tower, and they would probably win the game as long as they didn't make any crazy misplays. That makes this deck completely terrible, and you definitely need to get another way of doing damage, so let's fix it up right now. I completely understand that you probably don't have a lot of legendary cards if you're running a deck like this, but we just swapped in the Skeleton Barrel and the Hidden Tesla, and this deck has already gotten much better. You don't need the Witch's splash damage in the air, because now you have the Skeleton Barrel to drop down and do that splash damage. You also have the arrows, which is fantastic, the Musketeer to help on the air as well, and the Spear Gobs, and the Tesla can help out as well. So now you have 2 win conditions, 2 ways of doing tower damage, the Valkyrie, the Barbs on some defense, and even though this deck isn't perfect, it is 100 times better already just by making that change. So now you have a little bit better defense, you still really didn't lose anything, and now you have a better way of doing tower damage. Now right here's another example of where you just don't have a win condition, man. You really do have to make a very simple change here, make sure you get a win condition. All we got to do honestly is probably just toss the graveyard in here, because this is kind of looking like giant graveyard. So let's go ahead, toss in the graveyard. That'll make this deck 100 times better. You don't need the Inferno Tower in a deck like this. You have the Skeleton Army, you have the Dark Prince, you have the Witch. With a certain playstyle, this can be a lot better. I would also suggest making maybe some other changes, but either way, this would already be 100 times better once again, just by making that one change. Another reason why your deck might not be winning is because you might not be using some of the strongest cards in the season. Obviously, you might not have them unlocked, but a lot of people should be able to use a good range of cards that are actually better in the meta than these ones, especially in this deck at least. Wizard's not ideal. He's got low HP, he's very expensive, and man, he really doesn't get a lot of value sometimes. The minions get shredded, and in this deck, they really don't synergize with anything too well, so I don't think I would go with them here. The Battle Healer, once again, really not going to be ideal for this deck. She does do a little bit of tankiness, she can work, but absolutely, once again, no synergy here. The Executioner should be paired with a Tornado, so this deck is just all over the place, we're gonna make some changes. We swapped out the minions for the bats. We've added the Inferno Dragon to help you deal with tanks. This deck would 100% struggle with the Electro Giant, but once again, I think it's a lot better for a lot of other matchups because you have a real win condition here of the Goblin Drill Snowball, and the Wall Breakers underneath can be very powerful. You have easy air answers with the bats, Inferno Dragon, and Electro Spirit, and that actually brings us into our next topic. You do have to have a wide range of good matchups. If you're playing a deck and 70% of the decks that you go against are just straight up hard to beat, then obviously you're probably not going to be able to climb unless you are really skilled and you're able to somehow outplay your opponents. So it's another very important thing to make sure you have a deck that works against many other decks really well. You'll kind of get a feel for this if you play a couple games, you start to have some good luck, then you'll probably know that your deck is good, and it's also a really good indicator if you do know that a lot of your losses are coming from your personal mistakes, not your deck. So I'd love to hear about your guys' decks down below. I'll try and reply to as many comments as I can to try and help you guys fix your decks up if you do have any questions. So thank you so much for watching, everybody. Stay tuned for more decks and Clash Royale videos. Have a fantastic day. Master Diddy san out.